with a solemn but very proud heart that I thank you for the opportunity to be able to be here and to say a few words this morning in memory of those remembered here before us at the 2023 Australian Ex-Prisoner of War Memorial 19th Anniversary Service. Could I begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land where we gather today, the land of the Wadawurrung people, and pay respects to elders past and present. I'd also like to acknowledge the Honourable Catherine King, MP Federal Member for Ballarat and Minister for Infrastructure, Transport and Regional Development, and representing the Prime Minister here today. To Mr Tom Chidiac, the Vice Consul of the United States of America, representing Her Excellency, Commodore Gregory York, Senior Naval Officer Victoria, representing the Chief of Defence, our local member, Ms Juliana Addison and Michaela Settle, to my councillor colleague, Councillor Samantha McIntosh, and Ms Megan Spencer, the award-winning Remembrance podcaster, and of course, the researcher, one of our favourites, Dr Tom Roberts, who is with us as well. There are many, many special guests that are here, and Bruce alluded to such a diverse group of people that go out of their way to continue to come to make today a special event on our annual calendar. And I would like to welcome each and every one of you to our great city. I stand here today on behalf of the City of Ballarat to pay our respect to each and every one of the 36,400 names engraved on this memorial wall. The Australian Ex-Prisoners of War Memorial was opened on the 6th of February 2004 by General Sir Peter Cosgrove, former Governor-General, in front of over 11,000 people. I was there on that day and it was a significantly much hotter day than today. I think it was a balmy 38, 39 degrees, and if you weren't wearing a hat, then I'm sorry, you're going to go away with a sunburned head. Our memorial attracts over 50,000 visitors each year to this precinct, and such is the respect for those men and women that endured so much, so far from the love and safety of their homes here in Australia. And we struggle to comprehend what pain and suffering was experienced by those servicemen and women that were held captive as prisoners by the enemy during the Boer War, World War I, World War II, and the Korean War. This memorial honours them and protects their legacy through the teachings we find in it, not just today, but for our future generations as well. And the City of Ballarat takes great pride in being able to support the memorial both financially and administratively. And the trustees of the Prisoner of War Memorial are to be commended for their hands-on support through school talks, tours of the memorial on a regular basis. Their work is invaluable, ensuring our POWs will always be remembered. The sad loss of so many lives within the POW camps exposes the futility and horror of war. Yet we hope from history's reality, presented here on this wall, that all who see it will take away the hope of a more peaceful world in our future. And again, I thank everyone for being here today. It's an important day for not only the legacy of these very brave servicemen and servicewomen, but for the world to look back and never let it happen again. Thank you.
I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands on which we gather and recognise any First Nations peoples who are here with us today. Can I also acknowledge the Mayor of the City of Ballarat, Des Hudson, Mayor of Golden Plains Shire, Brett Cunningham, and Mayor of Moorabool Shire, Rod Ward, who are here with us today, and the councillors who've also joined them. To Mr Tom Chidiac, it's so lovely to have you here representing Her Excellency Carolyn Kennedy, and you are most welcome here today. We have a long and deep shared military history at both of our countries. To my state MPs, Juliana Addison and Michaela Settle, to Commodore Gregory York, it's lovely to see you here again, to Tom Roberts and to Megan Spencer, who I'm looking forward to hearing, to all of the trustees of this magnificent place. It is so incredibly fitting that here we are again 19 years later. I think I've been to all 19 of the celebrations of this magnificent memorial. Can I also acknowledge and recognise Liz Blizzard, who's here on behalf of Peter Blizzard, the sculptor whose conceptual work really we are seeing, and it's held up incredibly well for the past 19 years. It is an incredible honour to be here at this 19th anniversary of this magnificent memorial. The Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, has asked me to send his regrets that he's unable to attend, and we want to certainly make sure that we get him here at some point. We come to this solemn place to remember those men and women who suffered the loss of their liberty as prisoners of war. Of course, this national memorial is unique. It's an important tribute to more than 36,000 Australian men and women who experienced unimaginable incarceration under intolerable conditions while in the service of this country. On a day like today, in a safe city like this, it can feel impossible to imagine the horror that those brave men and women experienced while in captivity. And as the years pass and the world wars feel further and further away from our daily lives, it can be hard to comprehend that those lines of names behind us on stone represent people who lived and breathed too, many in this community. As a nation, we must be forever mindful of the sacrifices that these individuals made. The memorial is, of course, also about the families that supported prisoners of war, the friends who fought with them, and the impact that that imprisonment had through generations and generations has had on their loved ones and their communities. For many families, this may be the only physical place to commemorate that life. The importance of this memorial in our national story cannot be underestimated. We're indebted to the trustees who created this important memorial and who continue to love and maintain it, with a focus for ensuring that all Australian prisoners of war are represented here in this place. Thank you.
The Honourable Catherine King, MP, distinguished guests, veterans, current serving defence members, ladies and gentlemen, I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians on the land on which we meet today, the Wadawurrung peoples, and pay my respects. I'd also like to add my acknowledgement to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that served in the Australian Defence Force through the years. I'd also like to acknowledge those defence personnel currently deployed on operations around the world, particularly the some 1,600 naval personnel in 18 ships that are deployed away from their homes this week. It is a great honour for me to be here again today representing the Chief of Defence Force, General Angus Campbell, AO DSC, and the Chief of Navy, Vice Admiral Mark Hammond, AM RAN, and at this magnificent national memorial and this special service. We've already talked about the 36,000 names etched in the granite behind us. They are the names of the known prisoners of war. Brave Australians not only joined the various armed forces and support agencies during the various wars, but were those captured and imprisoned, often in the most trying of circumstances. Over 22,000 of those Australians were those captured in the Pacific theatre of the Second World War, and there was also many of those that were Navy POWs. Last year, Navy remembered the 80th anniversary of the loss of the cruiser HMAS Perth, sunk in the Sunda Strait off Java on the 1st of March 1942. Perth, in company with USS Houston, encountered a vastly superior Japanese force, part of an invasion fleet that was heading to Java. They battled bravely, but after expending all of their ammunition, Perth and Houston succumbed to Japanese fire. Perth had a crew of nearly 700 personnel that night. Over half paid the ultimate sacrifice, going down with their ship. The remainder were captured and imprisoned. They endured the same hardship as their Army, Air Force and allied brethren as captives in Singapore, Japan, and on the Thai-Burma Railway. They all endured the brutal conditions at the hands of their captors, spending years of their young lives in captivity. At the end of World War II, only 218 members of Perth Ship's Company were repatriated back to Australia. They left behind 106 of their shipmates that had died as prisoners of war. They all had made this sacrifice in the defence of Australia and to maintain our way of life. The Australian defence personnel of today have a reputation around the world for courage, sacrifice, resilience and mateship. The characteristics of that reputation were born in the history of previous conflicts and in the Australian servicemen and women of the past. In particular, the reputation is inherited from brave men and women that were prisoners of war. Those POWs displayed the most amazing levels of courage, sacrifice, resilience and mateship. The place of the Australian prisoners of war in our history should never be forgotten, and that is why this memorial and this annual service is of such importance. May we be worthy of their sacrifice. Thank you.
Firstly, so commemoration is all about acknowledgement, and so I'm going to do some acknowledgements that you might have already heard today. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the country I'm standing on today and its traditional owners, the Wathaurong people, and I pay my respects to your elders past, present and emerging, and I extend that respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who may be here today. Thank you for having me on your country. I'd also like to acknowledge Catherine King, MP. Really enjoyed hearing your words. Vice Consul Tom Chidiac. Senator Kerry Ridgway. I didn't realise Sarah Henderson wasn't going to be here, so apologies if I have that incorrect, but I think I have your name correct. Councillor Des Hudson, Mayor. Great speech also. These words landed right here. As did the speech by Commodore Greg York from the Royal Australian Navy. Wow, rock star. That was an amazing speech. It was really great to hear a story about Navy prisoners of war as well. Juliana Addison MP, Michaela Settle MP, Colonel Luke Brady from the Australian Army, and of course the people here who are currently serving and or past serving Australian Defence Force members. I'd like to acknowledge you here today. I hope I haven't missed anybody. I'd also very much like to thank Bill Barr and the committee members of the Australian Ex-Prisoners of War Memorial for inviting me back again to be your guest speaker, third time lucky. It's fantastic to be finally standing here in person after 2 years of doing this by video and online. And of course, I'd also like to very much thank Bruce Roberts. It's fantastic to meet you in person for the first time as well. Bruce is a massive supporter of this, and I'm quite amazed by just how much he puts into this project, this annual project. You also are a rock star in my book. And I'd especially like to pay my respects to all of the people whose names are on the wall behind me, their descendants and relatives here today. And if this is not too vulgar a thing to do at a ceremony like this, may I ask for a show of hands to those who have a family member whose name is on this memorial behind me? Amazing. Me too. Thank you. It's a great honour to be able to speak in front of you today, again in person, and also in front of my father, Bob Spencer, the eldest son of Henry Bailey Spencer, or Harry as he was known, my grandfather, whose name is also on the wall behind me, as Bruce mentioned earlier, and next to that of his brother, Nathaniel. Both Harry and Nathaniel were prisoners of war during World War II in Germany, Army corporals in the 2nd, 7th and 2nd, 8th Battalions respectively, both of them captured in Crete in 1941. and both of them were lucky enough to make it home to Australia after the war finished in 1945. So now in his 87th year, my dad Bob, who's probably going very scarlet red right now, Bob experienced life as a child of a prisoner of war during World War II. It was, as you might expect, an uncertain time. And as Bob can tell you, and as he told me when I made that podcast that Bruce mentioned for the Australian War Memorial a few years ago about my grandfather's prisoner of war experience, Harry's prisoner of war experience, Bob's father, left a unique imprint on Harry's life, on his son Bob's life, and on the lives of all of his family members. And along with 11,000 other people, my dad Bob was also here at the inauguration of this memorial 19 years ago. And now, by a twist of fate, here I am speaking in front of him and you at this auspicious occasion in this auspicious place. Through the vicissitudes of war and history and time, here we are all together in this moment, sharing a common wartime thread in person. And with the recent passing of Warrant Officer Colin Fraser, Royal Australian Air Force, who, like my grandfather, also spent time at Stalag 7A in Germany, I'm advised that there are now no active prisoners of war left in Victoria, and that Australia-wide there are only around 20 prisoners of war still with us in their 100s. So unfortunately, I'm unable to speak in front of a living ex-prisoner of war today, which of course makes this wall behind us even more precious, urgent and necessary, and the responsibility that falls on us, the descendants and relatives and communities of these ex-service personnel, even bigger, more urgent and necessary. As Professor Christina Toomey, author of the great book, The Battle Within, Prisoners of War in Post-War Australia, once said to me in that same podcast for the Australian War Memorial, Australian prisoners of war had a very different type of war experience to those of their non-prisoner of war counterparts. Their war was unique, as were their issues, injuries and needs when they got home, something I'm sure that many people here today know about through their lived experience. For those ex-prisoners of war who did make it home, oftentimes their experiences were under-recognised, not acknowledged or undervalued. Oftentimes their stories and experiences, moreover, were expected to fade into the background. Something that I still feel to a certain extent happens today when it comes to the Australian prisoner of war story and experience within our national wartime history. It's still an undertold story, and I feel unfairly so. Perhaps you might feel the same way. It might be a difficult story, but it is a rich story, and it's not one size fits all. So as these service personnel, these ex-prisoners of war pass, and as we move further and further away from the wars in which they served, it therefore falls to us to keep the flame of their memories, experiences, stories and legacies alive. It's up to us to fearlessly uncover this history. It's up to us to learn not only about what happened to these service members and what they went through during wartime, but what happened to them afterwards and to their families and to their communities. Their story is unique, their story is valuable. They are part of us, and in turn, we are part of them. Stories like that of my grandfather's, an Australian Army soldier interned in 4 different camps in Germany and occupied Poland for as many years during World War II, after firstly being transported by ship from Greece and then in cattle wagons to Stalag 7A in Mossburg near Munich. Harry just couldn't settle when he got home, and he says that over and over again in the memoir he handwrote before his death in 1987. Stories like that of Australian Army Nursing Service Sister Betty Jeffrey, later Lieutenant Betty Jeffrey, who survived 4 years as a prisoner of war, also in as many camps between Bunker Island and Sumatra, interned by the Japanese Army. In the Palembang camp, along with Australian Army nurses Mickey Sire and Flo Trotter, Betty Jeffrey was one of the members of the Women's Vocal Orchestra, an a cappella choir of female prisoners who sang beautiful classical compositions to help keep up the spirits of the internees as they wasted away under hardship, privation and disease in the harsh tropical camps. And stories like that of proud Ngarrindjeri man Uncle Roland Carter from Rauken in South Australia, the first of the 21 Ngarrindjeri soldiers to volunteer for the AIF in World War I, who became a prisoner of war of the Germans after being shot in France, held in 3 different prisoner of war camps. This Aboriginal man made it home to tell his remarkable story. Years later, Uncle Roland Carter chanced to meet one of the German anthropologists who'd been working at the World War I camps in Germany. His name was Leonard Adam, who, in an ironic twist of fate himself, became an internee during World War II in Australia after fleeing Nazi Germany and its anti-Semitic laws in the early 1930s. A Dunera transportee, Dr. Leonard Adam spent 2 years in No. 2 internment camp Tatura in Victoria from 1940 to 1942. Born a year apart, remarkably, Uncle Roland Carter and Dr. Leonard Adam became friends. And recently I met Private Carter's granddaughter, Auntie Glenys Wilson, for another podcast I've just finished about 2 of the Ngarrindjeri Anzacs. And as I found out, she inherited her grandfather, Roland Carter's beautiful singing voice, which a century ago captivated the Rauken church congregation, singing in the choir as a soloist. We need to know these stories. We are the better for it. And this isn't just some nice wall in some nice park in some nice regional town. As you and I know, it's much more than that, and that's why we're all here today. We are the living legacies of these Australian Defence Force members and ex-prisoners of war, and it's up to us to honour their names and give them a voice so that their stories never die. We owe it to them, and we owe it to all of them. Thank you.
On the beautiful lands of the Wathaurong people adjacent to Lake Wendouree, which was a very special site for our traditional owners. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and I'm grateful every day that I get to live on the lands of the Wathaurong people. It's an honour to be here with Michaela Settle, the member for Eureka, representing the Andrews Labor government, who shows a great commitment to our veterans, contemporary and beyond. It is an honour to be here, and thank you, Michaela, for joining me. We've mentioned our dignitaries a number of times, but I would like to mention my dear friend Catherine King, the federal member, Mayor Des Hudson, and everyone else has been here. I'd like to recognise the families who have travelled to be here, and it was very powerful to see the arms being raised of those people with direct connections to the 34,000 names that are on the wall. As mentioned by Bruce, I am a former history teacher, so to see students such as beautiful Lainey and Lily on the stage with me today from Loreto, to the students across Ballarat colleges and grammars to be here, we know that the story of our servicemen and the courage and the bravery that they've shown needs to live on. It needs to be celebrated in our schools. So thank you to all the schools who turn up, the teachers who are here supporting their students today. And we are in such significant company. To the long list, the distinguished list of wreath layers shows how significant this place is, how important this anniversary is for people from far and wide. Thank you for being here. So we're both granddaughters, and it's very special to be a granddaughter and get to speak at events like this. So thank you so much, Megan. I'm sure your grandfather Harry would be incredibly proud of you, as well as your great uncles and every member of your family. and you are the keeper of remembrance. And I just think good things do come to those who wait. We may have had to wait a couple of years to get you here, but thank you so much for being here. And to hear your insights into, and they were so heartfelt, about the experiences of your family members in Germany and the impact that that has had on subsequent generations in shaping your values and your identity as a family. And with champions of storytelling like Megan Spencer, I am so confident that the experiences of our prisoners of wars will live on, and as she said, that the flame will remain alive. I'd like to thank all our service organisations for being here today. I get to work with you week in, week out, and the support that you give our contemporary veterans is so important. And I would also like to thank our current serving Defence Force members. We're all indebted to you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the opportunity to participate in this very special event.
1,000 men are walking side by side, singing songs from home, their spirit as their guide. They walk toward the light, my lord, they walk towards the sun. They smoke and laugh and smile together, no foes to outrun. These men live on forever in the hearts of those they saved, a nation truly grateful for the path of peace they paved. They march as friends and comrades.
But they do not march for war, step closer to salvation. A tranquil, steady corpse, the meadows lit with golden beams, a beacon for the brave. The emerald grass untrampled, a reward for what they gave. They dream of those they left behind, and know that they dream of them. Forever in those poppy fields there walks 1,000 men, lest we forget.